everybody to our webinar this evening, where we'll be tackling some really tricky questions about what employers are looking for in their young employees today. And most importantly, how can teens help their parents help their teens to sort of develop those crucial skills? I'm Sharon Spence, and my co-host this evening is Susie Marsden, and together we are Amped Careers. So Susie and I started Amped Careers just over a year ago, and the reason for that is that we both saw in our professional lives the real difference it makes when you've got people in your team and in your organisation that really love their work, compared to those who say maybe just phoning it in. And so we saw an opportunity to really do something positive, to help people to find their way to work that they really can love and that will suit them. And we felt right from the very beginning that it was important to start with young people. So we've got a personal mission to help young teens today to, learn a little bit about themselves and to find a career direction that actually works for them, and to develop some career planning skills that will help them to step out into their first jobs and perhaps study and careers with courage and confidence. But it is a tough job out there in the job market for many people, and in particular for young workers who I imagine can feel quite intimidated as they look out with all the change going on. And certainly aside from COVID, there are a lot of other forces in our society and in our economy that's really changing the game for young people. In a recent study I read done by MB and MSD, pointed to some of those key trends that are really affecting young people and their employment. And one of those is that there's fewer job opportunities aside from COVID, partly driven by an older workforce who are staying in work longer, and also with automation and AI taking out some of those entry-level roles in some sectors. And there's actually a general decrease in job quality out there, with organisations taking on fewer trainees and perhaps fewer graduates, and a general trend towards more casual workers, part-time workers, fixed-term jobs, which means that young people are often in those entry-level roles for a longer period and perhaps not getting that investment and training that they might otherwise expect. And it can be really hard to get a full-time job when you've had no work experience at all. And we know that a lot of young people do find it really difficult to get part-time jobs. And of course, employers now are looking for a whole range of soft skills that are quite different from just looking for qualifications. And so we're going to be talking about that a lot more this evening. But just quickly, what are the numbers saying? Well, of course, unemployment rates did go up over the COVID crisis, but not quite as much as you might expect. So year on year, September 19 to 20, unemployment for young people went up by 2.7%, up to 13.2%. But in comparing that to the average since 2018, the average was about 12%. So yes, up a little bit, but not that bad. And if you look back to those early days of the recession, oh my God, in the 1990s, when people of my vintage came out as graduates, the unemployment rate at that point was up as high as 21%, and even more recently, the global financial crisis up at 18%. So things have been a lot worse on the youth unemployment front, but regardless of that, as parents, we really want to help our kids make their way into the working world with as many skills as possible to give them the greatest chance that they have to secure those jobs. So what really are those skills that employers are looking for? So we decided, why don't we ask people that are hiring and working with young people every day? So I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to introduce you to our panel tonight. These are an amazing group of people that have just such fabulous knowledge and experience in this space. And aside from that, they're all parents too, so they know what it's like to be on your side of the fence. So our first panellist is Travis Field. So Travis, he has been employing young people for many, many, many years. He at one point was one of 3 recruiters for the New Zealand Army, so he would have seen every possible type of teenager, I would say, through that experience. But more recently, he has owned and operated a number of hospitality ventures, and, you know, the hospitality spaces where you see a lot of kids, particularly in their first roles. I met Travis myself about 3 years ago, or just over, when he hired my oldest daughter Grace into his establishment on the North Shore called Fantail and Turtle. And I was really impressed at that time how Travis and his team really formed a fabulous, you know, made a lot of effort around teaming and really created a safe space for kids to develop their skills and really kind of grow into their capabilities. And Travis, you know, walks the talk every single day and as an example of that, he is the chair of the Big Buddy Trust, which is an organisation that supports young boys who don't have dads and puts them together with positive male role models. So every day Travis is doing great things for young people. So hi Travis, and welcome. Our second employer panelist is Hamish Wilson. So Hamish is a partner at Deloitte running their human capital consultancy. I met Hamish many, many years ago in my previous life at Fletcher Building, where we worked on some really big organisational change projects. And one of the things I absolutely love about the way Hamish works is he's always looking out into the world and thinking about what is changing out there in society, what's changing in our economies, what's changing in tech, and how do we, as organisations, need to adapt and change to remain relevant and to you know, remain successful. And, you know, and that's a real challenge for his clients. But what I like about Hamish is he also challenges himself and what they're doing in Deloitte. And what they're doing in Deloitte around graduate recruitment is they really changed the game there and pushed aside those old attitudes around hiring for a particular type of degree and looking for the very best marks. And so now they're looking for what is the whole person, you know, what are the attitudes and capabilities that they're bringing, knowing full well that they can train for those technical skills once the graduates are in the job. And finally, our panelist bringing the point of view from parenting is Justine Lamont. So Justine has been helping parents and families for well over 15 years and through her consultancy, Good to Great Parenting. What I love about the way Justine operates is that she really brings a thoughtful and practical approach to some of these really complex problems that parents face, and, you know, really supports her ideas with really great practical examples. So that kind of gives us a really we can easily relate to them. We can learn a lot about ourselves as we go through that process, challenge ourselves a little bit in terms of what we've always thought and believed, but build confidence to try out new ideas and to practice new things. So thank you, Justine, for coming along, and welcome. So just wrapping up now from me, our topic tonight is really a biggie. And the hour or so that we have, you know, we can only cover a few things. So we're going to just focus our energies on those most important things, skills and capabilities that Travis and Hamish have identified. And so to get started, I'm going to hand you over to Susie, who will be our moderator this evening, and she will lead the panel discussion. So over to you, Susie.
Kia ora, everybody. My job as moderator is to keep us on time, first and foremost. So the format for this evening is that Travis and Hamish are going to share what they are looking for in their potential young employees. And I'm actually also going to chip in on one myself if we do have time. And then for each characteristic, so they'll do one at a time, for each characteristic, Justine is then going to share those practical things that you can do at home to foster this. So hopefully that will be super helpful for you. Some logistics, we are recording this, and so if there's any content you want to come back to, watch out for an email from us. We will share the link. And we also have a very short survey at the end of this webinar. We'd be delighted if you would fill it out. The reason for that is we want to make sure that we can get better and better at running these, and also you might have some fantastic ideas for topics for future webinars that you would like us to cover. Now, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your toolbar on the Zoom window. So if you do have any questions as the evening goes forward, please type them, and if I do my job right, there'll be a good amount of time at the end to answer these. So when we talked to Travis and Hamish before this webinar, even though they are recruiting into entirely different sectors, interestingly, they both shared that they recruit for character or characteristics over skills. And even though they used really different language, they both actually shared many of those same characteristics. So to get us started, I'll hand over to you, Travis.
Thank you, Susie, and hi, everyone. And thank you, Susie and Sharon, for putting on this evening. It's an incredible idea, and big respect to the parents who are here, and hopefully even some teenagers that are here, caring enough to be here tonight. As Sharon said, I've employed thousands of teenagers over the years, especially in the Army and more latterly in hospo. And most importantly, the thing I'm proud of is my own 23 and 20-year-old are excited and happy about the careers that they've chosen. As Sharon said, I'm looking for character generally over skill set and those soft skills. Particularly in hospo, I really do brush over the achievements at school, and I'm looking for character. And just to throw out the hospo there, just because I'm not looking for the qualifications doesn't mean that's a career your children shouldn't consider. My manager earned, well over $100,000 into his in his mid-20s. There's lots of scope and transferable skills in hospitality. I love the industry. So what am I looking for? Firstly, I'm really looking for sociability. That's fairly obvious in hospitality, but I was also looking for it in the Army and in other businesses that I've owned. And so I'm looking for people who can relate to their colleagues first and foremost, and then their customers. And so on a CV, the sorts of things I'm looking for is, does this candidate play sports, belong to clubs and organisations? When I'm interviewing them, I'm trying to subtly find out, what do they do in their spare time? Are they socially interactive? Do they have quite a busy private life? That really appeals to me. I really love it when I see service or voluntary work. So, if you're young people, I like if they're doing the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, that's a great program. But if I see on their CV through school, or even better after school, when they finish school, if they're doing some sort of voluntary work about something they're passionate about, then that really appeals to me. In the interview itself, I'm looking to somebody who's inquisitive and is asking me questions. The kind of paradox of that is, if they, at the end of the interview, think that they've listened more than what they've asked or spoken, then they're probably more likely to get the job if they've listened more. And again, that's a soft skill in of itself, because it's showing interest and respect and curiosity, that listening. So that's something I'm looking for. It's really hard, like young people in hospitality, they've spent a lot of time already behind screens. And so I'm looking for, I guess, a level of confidence and ownership. Like, did they approach me? If they've approached me, even face-to-face or turned up at our work, then there's a high chance that they'll get a job with us. Did they have the confidence to do that? When they're interviewed, have they done a little bit of looking into the business and have some questions about that? And again, going back to listening, when they're in the interview, have they listened and asked some questions about what's being spoken about? The interviewer, be it myself or one of my team, will find that incredibly respectful and engaging. I'm not. It's something I do, and which is a little bit unusual. I try and find out what their relationship with their parents is like. And I might say, are you still at home? And do you have any family rituals? Get to do, what do you do together as a family? I often find that young people who have sound relationship with their parents just tend to be, I guess, more resilient, suffered less trauma, I guess. Something that I think parents can really help with their kids with is for them to help their children identify their good characters and traits. And one idea I have about that is to ask your kids, what is it that their 2 or 3 best friends like about them? And they may even need to ask those two or three friends, and to really, I guess, have a bit of a discussion with your kids about that, and get them to feel into what those traits are. You know, they may be the friend that will show up, at the call at 10 o'clock at night if somebody needs to be picked up. They may be the friend that can be listened to. They may be the friend that creates laughter or levity in a situation. They may be the non-judgmental friend, but just if they can own a couple of their characters and traits and speak about that, that's showing me a level of sort of, I guess, ownership and self-awareness when they come and work for me as to who they are. It's quite a big thing for a young person to get to, but it's showing a level of maturity to me.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Travis. I absolutely love that fact that it's crucial for sociability and interpersonal skills and hospitality, but it's actually crucial through almost all roles. And I love that, put the device down. So Justine, how would you recommend that parents can help their kids improve their interpersonal skills, put that device down and start learning some active listening? You just need to take yourself off mute.
Right, I'm with you. Sorry about that small delay. So social interaction. Thanks so much, ladies, for your kind words, and lovely to hear your thoughts there, Travis. On the social interaction, I do have a couple of ideas around that. So it sounds like a good way to make an impression is to know how to do these things. And this kind of issue comes up quite a lot with parents I've worked with over the last sort of 15 years. So we need to look at your particular child's ability to feel comfortable in a variety of situations. And so the short answer to that is you just practice it. And so what's worked really well for families is to set a situation up where you might actually choose a small group or host an activity or a get together and really observe what's going on. And what you're going to notice is that some of our kids, they can really intuitively pick up on what's the right thing to do, knowing how to give off those non-verbals and things. You're going to find that boys in general give a lot less eye contact than girls will. And so parents I've worked with have helped kids improve in this area by, really noticing when kids are giving off those right messages. So it might mean sort of, saying in a nice voice, when you look at me, it feels like you're actually interested in what I'm saying. You're going to have to be a little bit careful about how you say that because, our young people sometimes might hear that as a bit of a sarcastic comment. So if you feel that it's more effective, you might actually choose to text them or something. But the point is that you're communicating with them in a way which tells them, you're being emotionally literate and you're modeling how you can actually give people feedback. How can they be a good host and make people feel at ease? It could be other things, like you might notice that they, fill up everybody's water glass. You haven't asked them to do that. So that's just a really nice cue. So all of these sort of things that we're doing by taking, time to sort of notice what's going on, we're really helping them. I've got another story which addresses what you just said, Susie, about, how do you get them to put the phones down? And so I was working with a family where this was a real issue and the mum felt that it was getting a bit too much. So we worked on a few approaches, things that she could do to try and encourage this. And she had a really interesting story to tell me afterwards when she sort of said, my child actually came up to me and said, Mum, can you please put your phone down and look at me? Because then I'll know you're listening. So yeah, it's quite interesting what happens, what we get back. But all of the parenting things that we're doing about creating habits over time. So it's over a period of time, we're helping them to connect. We're looking for those micro moments of connection, and those are the really important things that will help you to be able to sort of move effortlessly through different social environments. And some kids are going to find that easier and harder. So just start where you are and work towards that.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Justine. Now, you mentioned before ownership, Travis. Could you expand a little bit more on that? What did you mean by that?
Ownership. Oh, what does it mean to me? I guess it's kids or young people having a sense of themselves, even the ability to own mistakes. One KPIs of a couple of my managers before have been a couple of good stuff ups a week, and for that, that for me is about growing businesses. If you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing the limit and growing the business. And so when young people are ahead of me, and if they're interviewing and if they're confident enough to own a mistake, and then that shows great character. And also, even better is if they say what they've learned from it. And at their age, they should be making plenty of mistakes. That's how they're learning. Even though I don't like the calls from the police at 2 o'clock in the morning, because I've got my son.
So Travis, you kind of can assess that on the job and give them KPIs and actually foster that, which makes it okay. How do you assess whether someone has kind of got that characteristic when they're sitting in front of you for the first time?
It's hard when they're young, because they're still quite insecure. But if they have a level of, I'm looking for self-awareness, knowing themselves, and particularly boys, crikey, it takes a lot longer to get there than girls, but that's okay. It's just part of their development. So how will I see that? If they can talk about themselves without being too shy, as parents, you might want to remind them that the person who's interviewing them is just a person as well. They're a nerdy dad or an overbearing mum, or we're just they're actually used to us. Just remind them that we're humans too, and be prepared to share a little bit. But that's quite a big stretch for a young person, and I realize that. What I want to do is create an environment where they do start to show their character and have a bit of banter with customers and each other. But I don't expect that at an interview. If I see a bit of humour in a respectful way, then they've got a job, really.
And I mean, accountability and taking ownership and owning up to mistakes, it's actually really, really hard. It's quite a mature attribute, isn't it? But it's an incredibly important part of teamwork. So how can you, Justine, how do you reckon parents could give their kids a bit of a head start in this space?
That's a really good question. So what I liked about what Travis said just before was, our young people need quite a lot of practice at making these decisions, the good and the bad ones, so that eventually they're going to start making some good ones, and the mistakes are just part of that. So I totally agree with that. So, this is all about learning to be responsible for ourselves. And it's really good to remember that, the relationship we have as parents with our children is really different to that of the employer. And so, we are at home, they're safe people, where actually they can have a really bad moment and let it all hang out. And the love that we have for them is unconditional. So, they've got that no matter how, the behavior goes down. So, we want to normalize that sort of ability to be very authentic, and normalize making mistakes. So, if I just think about my own experience, I was making an apple crumble recently, and in my pantry I've got all these spices and things, and the cayenne pepper is a package which looks quite similar to the cinnamon. So I think you probably know where I'm going with this. And so I ended up making a topping, which was basically inedible, you know, and it's a bit frustrating because even though I tried to get rid of the topping and just eat it anyway, it was ruined. So, you know, I just thought that was a really good opportunity to say, well, actually, it's not a big deal. It's an apple crumble. Yeah, and a lot of the time I get parents telling me things that have happened at home. Like I remember a lady telling me about her son who, you know, he was a little bit heavy-handed when he closed the door and actually the hinges broke. And so, yeah, so that could have been easy to just ignore, but what she tried to do was to help him keep his dignity, but also clean up the mistake by literally going and getting the vacuum cleaner out. So once it had been repaired, he got to clean up that dust. So, you know, it's moving away from those ideas of punishment and shame and more towards an effective way of letting them embrace their mistakes, feeling okay about themselves, so that they don't have to sort of, you know, end up in a work environment where they're blaming someone else or, you know, just having a hissy fit. Yeah, so same, if I lose it, I'm going to say to my kids, you know, I'm sorry I said that. And when everyone's calmed down, I might sort of, you know, say, oh, okay, what can we do to make the, you know, everyone feel a bit better? So I guess the challenge for us is, you know, like Travis says, when police turn up or they say they've broken the TV, can we be that calm, alert, focused parent, you know, and press that sort of pause button. Once you've sort of done that, then you can sort of work through some solutions, but you might want to sort of ask them, you know, what could your strategy be here? Yeah, so it's about having challenges and struggles, and then, you know, modeling that when things don't go our way, we don't like it, but that's the way it is.
It's a lifetime of learning on that one, Justine.
Yeah.
But what a difference it makes in the working environment when actually you do have people that do, you know, own the mistakes, and also the people around them are not taking that blame attitude as well, you know, because creativity comes out of that, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Just something for parents. Our children are changing from children into adults, and what would be helpful is if we change from parents of children to parents of young adults, and we need to remind ourselves that. And I think I can remember you coming in, Sharon, to work and like sitting there, I think probably in admiration as your daughter was going around as a duty manager in charge of, you know, of a place full of 70 or 80 people.
Yep.
And you got my girl is actually a young adult.
Yeah.
And so one of the tools I've used as a parent is to just say, you know, what are 2 or 3 things that about my children that means they're going to be okay, and just really feel into those attributes that they have. Those, you go, oh well, actually, you know, young Bob, he's everyone likes him. You go, well, actually, he's going to be okay. Or Sally has moral courage. Or so, you know, as parents, not only are our children a change, we need to take responsibility for changing our relationships with them as well. And that tool of reminding yourself, or in my case, myself, that my 2 young adults are going to be okay because I found changes the relationship. So as you have this discussion with them about going out and getting a job, you come at it from a peer or caring or non-judgmental way, rather than you should be knocking on doors, you're not doing this enough, you need to go out and do some volunteer work. Yeah, it just, you know, we need to grow with them here.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I loved that you said when I first met you, Travis, is actually in that being a parent of a child to being a parent of a young adult, instead of being in the front with the torch shining the way for them and them following in behind, you step in behind and put a hand on their shoulder so that they can step forward and stumble and scrape their knees, but you're there with them. I thought that was a really beautiful analogy, so thanks for that. Thank you so much. And now Hamish, who's been sitting very quietly, what are some of the characteristics that you are looking for when you're recruiting graduates into Deloitte?
Thanks, Susie. Kia ora koutou, everyone. So thanks, Susie and Sharon, for setting this up tonight. So couple of the things, I wanted to set some context first, just so folks could understand. So as a Deloitte partner across our recruitment, and I've been doing that for about 15 years now, I've recruited, I think, about 3,000 plus graduates into our business. And we've definitely seen some major changes over the years. We've got a lot of analytics about what makes an outstanding graduate, and we track grads through their work life. And I also have a 15-year-old, 13 and 11-year-old. So and I'm the youngest of 6 boys. So as context, I feel like I can provide some good thinking around what I've seen. So Deloitte has changed a lot in the last, I'm going to say more in the last 5 to 7 years than in the last sort of 50 years. And we now, when we're recruiting our graduates into our business, look really for 2 things. The first is intellectual curiosity, and the second is resilience. And we've started to talk a bit about that. And with resilience, I always add with a dose of accountability, and we've talked about ownership tonight. So I thought I'd probably define both of those and then run through them with you and what we're looking for. So intellectual curiosity, for us, it's about asking questions and sort of why do things happen, and the thinking behind it is also important. And for us, it's as simple as showing interest in a person's business or about a person's life. It always amazes me when I get through to the end of an interview and I ask the graduate, have you got any questions? And they go, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm like, wow, you're just about to make a life decision to come and join an organization like us, and you don't have any questions. So we have a bit of fun with that and say, oh, well, okay, did you know you're working for $1 an hour or whatever? And they're like, oh, hold on. So we're trying to have fun as we go through this, but you actually, they have to be armed with questions and be comfortable asking those questions. And we believe that starts right back at the dinner table when they're 5, 6, 7, and you open the conversation around how do we live our lives, what's important to them. And I go back to what Justine said before about the whole person and bringing that whole person to the dinner table and allowing them to have respectful opinions on certain topics. So it's about asking those questions. And I think when we think about our meetings, and that could be social meetings as well as work meetings, that then goes into how do we handle ourselves in that meeting and showing the interest around a person. And you can practice those things when you're going over to friends' houses with your kids and they're introducing themselves and shaking hands or whatever else, and then saying, how are you? How was your weekend? Because I notice kids these days don't do any of that type of conversation yet. As a child myself, and I've got friends in the same age bracket that were brought up with that same type of setup. So it makes the other person feel good about themselves and is important. If I jump to resilience, this is becoming more and more important. So how do we define that? It's you get back up when you've had a knock or a knockdown, and we are seeing less and less of this. And so how do we get it, or how do we grow that resilience or build that resilience? I think Justine talked about her cooking episode. It is, and Travis has talked about mistakes. It's about making mistakes. But what we're noticing these days is, and really this is a challenge back to parents, is allow the children to make mistakes. So Justine used cooking. We had Hazel, our 9-year-old, make a cake. She forgot the baking powder. We watched her forget the baking powder. I was sitting there going, oh my God, we really want the cake, but are we going to be able to eat this? And actually she missed it, and it was a disaster. But in our house, we sort of, I'm not going to say we mocked it, but we certainly made fun of it, but made it so relaxed that the mistake became, it's okay to make that mistake. There wasn't any high drama around it or anything like that. And I tell you what, we still ate the cake. so what I'd say is, please let them make mistakes, discuss it, and it's okay to actually laugh at a few of those mistakes, even though they're probably painful to watch. I talk about the accountability piece and that dose. That's if the child doesn't take accountability, or the young adult doesn't take accountability for those mistakes, then and parents run around to fix it, it becomes much more difficult. So I was on camp recently, school camp, and the amount of kids that forgot their pillows, and parents drove an hour to deliver a pillow. And I'm sitting there going, wow. And then we opened the question across the parents in the camp who actually packed their children's bags. And these are 13-year-olds. And other than 2 parents, and I'm talking there's a lot of kids there, they all pack the kids' bags. I'm like, wow, what happened to the accountability? They even got a camping list. So it wasn't like it was going to be hard, but what happened to the accountability that children are taking, or young adults are taking these days? And I find that quite hard, and we're seeing that come through, that accountability and that resilience is missing.
And so, Hamish, you mentioned that now at Deloitte, which is quite radical, you're not necessarily looking for specific degrees. You're looking from a wide range, but you are looking for these characteristics. So why is intellectual curiosity? You could be looking for like any number of characteristics. So why is intellectual curiosity so important to you?
Because when you go into a meeting, we want a new graduate to show interest and understanding of that business. We want them to have done some research. If we picked any company, I'll pick Fletcher's because Sharon mentioned it before, but we'd want them to go online, have a look at Fletcher's and what they do and how they do it. And when they get there, go, wow, actually, these guys made this money, or they had these challenges or whatever else, and can have a conversation about it. And that's what's important, because then the client or person feels that they've got someone that's interested in them and what they're doing.
And it doesn't need to be, Hamish does it. It applies in whatever job, doesn't it?
Totally.
Even if you're learning how to make a coffee at this new coffee machine in a hospo situation, it's kind of having that curiosity about what does this one do? What does that knob do? And how do I clean it? And
what's a great coffee?
Yeah, what's a great coffee look like? What's the difference between a flat white and a
yeah, exactly.
I don't know. So I think you can bring that curiosity to whatever job you are deciding to pursue.
I agree, and I think both of these ideas of curiosity and resilience, they actually help you to become a hell of a lot more adaptable too. And with the fast changing working world that we're getting into, you really need adaptability. So Justine, curiosity and resilience, what pearls of wisdom do you have for parents on how they can foster that?
Oh, I really like the curiosity one first, because I think it's quite respectful as well to make sure that if you're going into an environment where people are spending their time with you, that you've actually thought about that. But what we know about that young person's brain is that they're not very good at perspective taking, and planning and organizing is obviously something they struggle with a bit too. So they might need a bit of a nudge from us to be able to do that. So one way we can give them that nudge is to sort of, as you say, find out as much as you can about the organization. Think about, people there. Maybe you might know someone who works in the field, or ask them, before they go to the interview, what is it about that field that you're really interested in? And then you're also going to model being a lifelong learner, because as parents, we've got plenty of opportunity to show that. Are we listening to good quality radio? Do we watch, TV programs and talk about that? Having a lot of good quality books and magazines around the house, all those things are going to promote that. And I like the way that Hamish was talking about how, dinner tables, that's a classic area where you might want to really have some good quality questions going around. What do you think we should do about global warming? Tell me why you would vote for this person, or why you wouldn't vote for this person. What should we do about the housing crisis? And, these are all questions that you think are probably aimed at older kids, young people, but actually there'll be a lot of little kids, younger kids, who are quite interested in sharing their views on these things. Kids are actually really interested in this stuff. And, what's one thing you learned today sounds like a bit of a cheesy sort of a question, but it's going to get them thinking about what's going on in their world. And that's really what we're trying to do, because, where your attention goes, then you've got those sort of habits happening. But I would also consider asking them what sorts of things they're interested in that maybe we know very little about, because chances are we're not going to have the same sorts of interests as our kids. And quite often when I'm giving talks at schools and things like that, people will come up with, stuff they learned from their children. If there's a technical issue, quite often I'll ask my kids about how to fix it. They're really good at helping with stuff like that. So that's what I'd sort of say about intellectual curiosity. Your other point that you wanted answered was about resilience. And so just in terms of the resilience, what I would say about that is really important. So they get the resilience from the relationship with us. And one thing that we do as parents a lot of the time that we're pretty much unaware of is we spend a little bit of our time and energy sort of focusing on the stuff that isn't going so well. So I really would recommend that people try and be a bit aware of that. One of my clients was telling me about this, and so she was sort of saying that the thing that was really bothering her with her young adult was that, he just wasn't getting showered early enough in the evening, and it was sort of going into the night, and he was up late, and it was sort of putting everything out of whack. So we sat down in our session and we sort of worked out that actually he was coming home on time. He was doing the studies that he had to do. He was actually sorting out his laundry, and he was even getting off his phone. So those are quite major things, right? But it was this one thing that was really sort of bothering her. So, when we start to look at the things our kids are doing, we need to sort of think about, am I focusing on, that sort of criticism? Have I got the balance there? Because the research in this area is that one criticism to every 5 sort of positive things we're noticing means that our relationship can be sort of headed for the rocks. So the resilience that we get as the parent is to know that, just because there's something that they're not doing doesn't mean they've failed. We've got to sort of work through that and just think about the balance there.
So what's the right ratio?
Oh, wow, good question. So it basically means we just need to develop some awareness around that. And obviously more, if you're going to have a criticism, you've got to notice the other stuff. So it's not that we can't give them feedback about what's going on. But we're just going to be thinking about where our attention is going, because a lot of the time our attention is to picking up all the things that aren't going well, and that's quite demotivating. That's the point about that, just to file away. So another story that I was thinking of, because when Hamish mentioned the pillow situation where kids aren't learning stuff, a really good example for this is where kids share a message online, and I've heard a lot of stories about this over the years. So unfortunately there'll be a message that's shared and there'll be something abusive or derogatory in the message, and depending on how parents will react, and sometimes if it happens in a school environment, schools might take some action and suspend somebody. And I know of a situation where this sort of escalated, and the parents whose child was suspended were they just thought this is going to be the end of her life, and they really didn't they didn't like it, and so resisted it. And in that particular situation, it was a shame, because it meant that there was a lot of escalation and a bit of a storm, and not a lot of learning happened. Whereas the resilient parent can sort of stand back and say, okay, right, what happened there? Young person with prefrontal cortex not online yet, press the button. Do you know what? They made a mistake. Think about what could happen. How could we make this a teachable moment? And the teachable moment is that I press the button, I let my friend down. So then we have the conversation between the two young people, where the one says, actually, do you know what? I'd like it if you could forgive me, and I hopefully can earn that trust back. So that's how we learn to get that resilience that you're talking about, where you actually give them a chance to take responsibility and don't just kind of say, okay, no, that's going to ruin their life.
Cool. Well, we've got a bit of time. Any other thoughts on building resilience from the other panelists who are also parents? What are you doing with your kids?
Well, if I could chuck in my idea around that is, I would say with 2 daughters, one 21 and one 18, you know, there is often a moment, as you say, Justine, where you want to go in boots and all and be all around how to solve this thing. And I have a daughter that was, you know, she was a really competitive hockey player. She was in the rep teams, and, you know, they go through a lot of disappointment as in that process as they're going through that, you know, a lot of work. And so, you know, I felt at my best, I would say, is when we sat down and debriefed it together, you know, and actually worked out how she was going to solve for it, you know. And so I felt that was me being, when I was on a roll. I mean, I would not say for a second that I was always on a roll, but, you know, stopping myself at that moment from trying to wade in, pick up the phone to the coach, or do what you might otherwise be tempted to do, and just work out how help her to think about how she might have a conversation with the coach, or she might have a conversation with, or whatever it is that she was going to do. So I think it's that moment of just stopping yourself from taking action, and then thinking, well, how can I empower my child to actually manage this situation for themselves?
Hamish, Travis, any other?
I've got a thought on the jumping over to the intellectual curiosity piece. So we had a dinner the other night around the table with kids and had a conversation. One of the our 15-year-old Olive asked the question, should I go to university? And I do a lot of work around capabilities for the future with businesses and future of work. And what capabilities, Dad, do you think I need to build? Really interesting conversation, because like, I don't want to put my own judgments on having been at university, and how do we then define success, and what does success look like now, and what would it look like in the future? And we had a very open conversation on that, and what she would want to do and what interests her. So going back to Travis's point about the great things that you're good at, and thinking through those, and actually at the end of the conversation, she said, yeah, I think I'd probably still go, but my son, who's only 13, said, yeah, I'm not so sure about whether I'd go. I'm looking at these types of capabilities, and I'm not sure that'll give me that. And it was, we're making no judgments or no predetermined ideas around it. It was just a conversation, but it was kind of interesting to have such an open conversation without my wife and I, because I was holding my wife back from going, oh my God, what are you teaching them? But actually being very open with, they're only still young, there's still lots of time to develop and change thinking, and it's okay to do that. But really, I found it really, really interesting.
On the resilience, I might suggest to my young people, well, you know, is there another way to reframe that situation, or is there another way to look at it? You know, they might, yeah, the event might happen, and they might revert to shame or guilt or whatever they might revert to, and you go, well, you know, it's an opportunity to be gentle on yourself and to reframe it, or who you were yesterday. When you made that, was you're a bit grumpy and hungry when you made that decision, and you know, you lashed out. But now the fact that you're prepared to say sorry means that you're wiser, you know, and well, I don't know, you can reframe it. Success is an interesting one for me. Success in university. I've got one kid at university doing a Bachelor of Science, and the other one is a 20-year-old who was failing miserably at school. He said failing. I just said, son, school isn't for you. And he's nearly a qualified electrician. And we were walking around the golf course the other day, and he said, Dad, if I won lotto, I think I'd still be an apprentice electrician.
Yay!
And I said to him, look, success is a very, very personal word. There's lots of people trying to impose what success looks like on you, you know, earn this, drive this, wear that, travel here, whatever it is. But you've got to decide what success looks like. But if you're 20 years old and saying, if you won lotto, you'd do the same thing you're doing today, tomorrow, I think you're a pretty successful young man. So yes, success. And one more thing, I saw a question here, which is such a beautiful and common one, about my kids aren't listening to me. My opinion's old and outdated. in order for a child to become an adult, they must separate from their parents. So it's one of those things is they're unconsciously going to push you away, ignore you. You don't know anything. You're too old. You're just nagging me. So one, it's perfectly natural. Two, persevere. Three, use some friends, use other adults in their lives, aunties, uncles, your own friends, use their peers as well to, because in order to become an adult, they will push us away. Mine, I'm thankful are coming back. They're playing golf with me, or my 23-year-old daughter's saying, Dad, when are we having brunch? But for quite a period there, didn't know anything. I was useless. I was, outdated.
A fossil.
Yeah, a fossil.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to Q&A in the end. So, and on that, please, if you do have some questions, pop them through. That would be fantastic. The very last characteristic I'm going to talk about is teamwork. It probably goes without saying that being able to work well in a team is absolutely vital. There are so few jobs in the world where you are working entirely on your lonesome. And a lot of the key characteristics to being a fantastic team member have already been covered. So the great sociability skills or interpersonal skills, taking ownership, fessing up when you've made a mistake. And actually on the subject of fessing up when you've made a mistake and taking ownership for that, a lot of the leading thinkers in teaming, talk about the very foundations of a healthy team is a vulnerability-based trust. And of course, to fess up takes a tremendous amount of vulnerability. So that's a biggie. But some of the other attributes that I know that employers are looking for, and I certainly looked for them when I was a recruiter or recruiting for roles, and that is reliability. So obviously doing what you say you were going to do when you said you were going to do it by. I mean, nobody wants unreliable team members. And then the second one is generosity. I love that sort of generosity in a team, the willingness to step forward and lean in and support others in the team, to find solutions. Often it's referred to as kind of having a can-do attitude. And no one kind of really wants the, I'm really too busy for that. I've got other priorities. I can't help you. That too many times makes for a really bad team member.
Yeah.
And then the last thing on the topic of generosity is actually, and if you've ever been on the receiving end of this, and I really hope you all have, we all know how fabulous it is when somebody acknowledges our contributions. So when we've been part of doing something, actually taking the time to acknowledge the contributions of a team member is absolutely wonderful. So Justine, what are your thoughts on how we help teenagers turn the me into the we?
So it's what we're noticing and mentioning. We saw how they chose to go and see the film their friend wanted to see, and we know they really want to go and see Godzilla. They contributed some ideas to the family holiday, even though they probably wanted to stay at home or go and visit their friends. So it's all about that cooperation, that flexibility that you're describing, which are really lovely qualities to notice and to mention. And so it also feeds into the teamwork. So teamwork is when your husband does the dishes after you've cooked the dinner. And he gets called the god of washing up for that by other people. And teamwork's when your sibling comes in, and because you're busy studying for your final exams, he decides he'll take the bins out, even though it's your actual job to do that. And I liked your point about the reliability. So, when that person who is sometimes or quite frequently late in the morning to leave the house, when they actually remember to set their alarm, so we're not just waiting for them, because we want to get out the door. That's also part of that teamwork and knowing that we all have to do that. Or, if on the odd occasion I might be unwell, someone else is going to have to take over and do the washing and all those other things. So, tons of examples, but also feeding back into the work context. It's like, what are the strengths that our team have? So some team members are going to be that person who's really easy with the customers out the front and good at the front of house stuff. And then you're going to have those ones who are more precise and just like to sort of make sure they get all the specks of grease off the dishes.
Yes, heaven help the team that's got everybody is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do really need you know, people that bring all of those different skills to a team to really make it fly, don't we?
Yeah, and what I say to my family quite often, if you walk past my house, you'd hear me saying, guys, nothing's going to happen here without cooperation. You know, we can't get anything done in any team without that. And I'll say, look, I need help with this. This is for you guys to help. Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Well, we have covered social interaction, we have covered resilience, we have covered ownership and accountability and vulnerability, we've covered intellectual curiosity and teamwork. Nice.
The list is long.
Journalists. So we've got just a few questions. So do you want to take us away on that?
Yeah, so Hamish, there's one for you here. It's, I don't know, can you see it on the screen? It's how do teams get to the interview stage to showcase their great characteristics? What pops up on a CV that captures your eye? And many applications are online, so it's not so easy to, you know, stand out in the crowd.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Great question. So I'm thrilled to say and pretty excited that Deloitte won the Graduate Employer of the Year just for our process, actually, and it's a very inclusive process. So we do all of their candidates go through to an interview stage, which is actually online. So it's a video link interview. And what we do is we're looking for teamwork. So we're absolutely looking for someone with that. We're looking for if they've had any other jobs, and particularly, so we've done a lot of data analytics about our best graduates, and we've found that those graduates who have done waitering in that hospo sector, yay for Travis, actually are much more successful. And the reason we've picked up from that is they have to deal with difficult situations sometimes. They have to approach a table of people they don't need. They need to sort of sort and memorize or work through how to take orders. They have to walk and be organized. And so there's a lot in there.
Yeah. And you make sure they have a wonderful experience, even when there's World War III happening in the kitchen.
Absolutely, totally. Yeah, and we're looking for a self-starter, and we're looking for someone who's inclusive. And I think when we talked about that whole person, it's the whole person comes to that interview. What I haven't mentioned, I've been really we've been determined as a business not to look at marks and grades as much as we used to. So we would only take that top GPA or high mark average. Absolutely not. That has fundamentally changed for us. And we are looking at all different degrees, so at all backgrounds. So it's completely different. Like we would have typically looked for law or a high commerce degree, and no, nothing like that. So we've got all sorts of different people working for us, and I would have said Deloitte's changed for the better for that, because it's a completely different setup of a business and the types of people we have in there. And I can share my own example. When I did a review of my own team, over 16 boxes, I realized that I'd employed a whole pile of mini-me's. So if 16 boxes, I only filled 2, and I'm talking 40 people. So what we've specifically done is gone out to recruit quite different people to bring a richer end result and outcome for our clients.
Great. Thanks, Hamish. We've also got a question that I think perhaps it might be for you, Justine. I've got a very intellectually curious and sociable 17-year-old boy who's also quite shy when he first meets new people on the end of the ASD spectrum. What recommendations would you have for him?
So everything I said before about paying attention to getting them to go into a small group at first before sort of, it doesn't have to be a massive gathering. And so something that's fairly predictable so that he's sort of, got a bit of a ramp to get onto that. But these skills that we're talking about are all learned skills. And so we want people to learn it at their own pace. I would say just try and encourage him to go into as many different environments as possible. But there are specialist people who will be able to help with these types of skills. It's not so much social skills, it's called social thinking. And so there's a lot that I can do to sort of help. And if that person wants to get in touch with me, I can give them a few ideas. But really, we all sort of learn in a similar way. But I would say his expectation would be not to give as much eye contact, just generally. That can be, quite confronting. But over time, we can all learn to improve in that area.
Thanks, Justine.
I would just add to that young people just blow me away with their acceptance of difference today. So just be aware of that, for your son, as young people are incredible at having, compassion and awareness for difference. And then, look for a good sort of environment. I employ a hearing impaired person, and in a highly loud, busy place, and also somebody on the autism spectrum, and the compassion and understanding that some of their peers have shown them in challenging situations has made us a much better business. It's incredible.
Great, thanks, Travis. And we also have one last question at the moment, actually directed at you, Travis, which is, how to, and I know you touched on it in the early part of the session, but how do they get noticed by you in your operation? So you talked about actually turning up is a good thing.
Turning up, like really, yeah, just turning up with a CV, not at lunchtime. Because we're really, really busy, but sort of probably a mid-afternoon when there's lots of people around, and just saying, hey, is a manager around? And I'd love to, have a trial. And I'd say unless we're not employing at that time, they will definitely get a trial. Don't ask me, because I'll probably be playing golf.
So, I would say,
or drinking a beer.
And I would back that up. My daughter is stressing in Wellington in her first year at university about her lack of funds, and I said, get a job. and she did. She walked around, central Wellington, went and talked to a whole bunch of people through a CV, talked to her through a CV, and she got lots of interviews, lots. So, I really back that idea.
My team's looking for staff right now, especially if you're on the North Shore.
So I do back that idea of actually showing up and being able to talk to your CV at the time. I think that's a good thing.
Cool.
So hang on, let me see. How do you motivate a 19-year-old who sleeps during the day and wakes at night? Who does not respond to questions put to him? Okay, we've probably all got a few things to say about that. Justine, going to go to you.
Right, so motivating a 19-year-old who sleeps during the day. So look, I guess the thing about that habit that they've got into is it's something that hasn't happened overnight. So the way that we're going to address that is in lots of small ways. We're going to look at the routine and what is it that they are interested in, because you need to have some sort of motivation to get you out. So whatever else he's doing, and I don't know what's going on during the day, it's obviously not the thing that he really wants to do. So it's about making sure that they've got something that they actually do want to do to change that behavior. So really, I think we need to know a little bit more about why that's happened and how that's happened over time. It's probably not something that's instant, but there's a lot of kids that get into that situation where they are sort of, not quite sure what to do with themselves. So it'd be really interesting to know a little bit more about that. But there's a lot that you can do.
And so we've got a question at the moment, which I think is going to be an interesting one. What do I do? So clearly we've got some young adults on the call today. And what do I do if my parents want me to do a job that I don't like? Who wants to take this one?
I'm happy to pick that up, because that's what happened to me. So my parents were desperate for me to do med, and I was really getting some heavy pressure to do that. Look, I went through the rationale behind why I never wanted to do it, why it wasn't for me, and I was desperate to do law, and particularly criminal defence, when I actually did law and then practiced, I only practiced for 8 days because I realized I also hated that job. And what that taught me was actually I didn't really know until I was 23, 24, what are the things that really made me tick. So my advice to you is do the things that you enjoy doing at the time that you're doing it, and things will always fall into place, and they do. And just going back to the question at the top about sort of different degrees, I've just employed a person, a bright young woman, lots of personality, with an anthropology degree, it's a BA, and an ex-teacher. So I am not looking, I'm looking for the whole person, or we're looking for the whole person. So yeah, I wouldn't be railroaded into anything if you don't want to do it, but I certainly would be doing the things you like.
Yeah, and I do wonder, and maybe Justine, you'll jump in here around this, but relating to parents wanting you to do a job you don't like. I mean, I imagine it comes from a position of concern, position of wanting you to be sorted and safe in a job, and you might be able to give them that reassurance that you are sorted and safe by actually proactively, seeking out, and finding out about A, yourself, and B, what job you might like. And so that whole idea of kind of going, I've got this, and this is what I'm doing to discover what I will like, or this is what I'm going to try, or giving them some kind of reassurance that it's not going to fall into a black hole. I think maybe that might be something that might be helpful.
Great answer.
I think
and unless Gavin's the 19-year-old who's sleeping all day and waking at night.
Now, I think we're going to have to wrap up because we have gone over time.
Can Justine just answer that question though, from her point of view, and then we promise I will.
So I think what Hamish said made a lot of sense, where he was talking about, understanding what really makes someone tick. And so in the work that I've done over the years, parents tell me all the time, it can be 10 years before they really start to get a bit of a picture of what their child is like. And obviously for some people, it's going to take even longer. And I remember when I was going through the process of what job I wanted to do, and some people make up their mind, like I was in a meeting this morning and a woman was giving her talk, and she said she knew she wanted to be an accountant in the third form. She just knew, and then that's been her trajectory. Good, that's wonderful. But I remember there were so many people who I knew who they honestly didn't have a clue. So that could be why you've got the 19-year-old doing what he's doing. And also, parents have a lot of concern, because there's nothing that's going to scare us more than seeing our child adopting these sorts of habits, and we're thinking, oh my goodness, we start to catastrophize. We think they'll be like that for the rest of their life. So I just would hang in there. But equally, the person who wants their child to do a particular job, well, they've obviously felt, as you say, that that's a safe option, and we want our kids to have good lives.
The stats behind that, though, already with 100-year life, is that we're going to have 6 distinct, completely different careers. So if you think of that, then boy, how exciting. I look at that as excitement rather than anything else. 6 different wicked different jobs.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Susie, I think we might have to wrap. It's 9 o'clock.
Yes,
well past.
Yes. So, hey, look, thanks. Absolutely. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you to Travis, to Justine, to Hamish. You've been incredible. Thank you to everybody who's hung in there right to the end and asked such great questions. And we hope this has been very valuable to you. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Please answer the Q&A at the end, the wee survey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.